Imagine you're in a romantic relationship and your partner is not meeting your emotional openness or communication standards that you set for the relationship. How does that make you feel? Stressed? Frustrated? According to recent research, the way we cope with these unmet expectations can significantly influence how we feel about the relationship overall. Today, I'm going to summarize 2 studies that dive into how stress in relationships, particularly due to unmet openness standards, affects romantic satisfaction and the coping strategies we use to deal with it. The studies I'll be presenting explore how coping strategies like humor, punishment, emotional regulation, and avoidance can impact relationship satisfaction, with a special focus on the differences these strategies make based on gender and relationship dynamics they influence. For the next few minutes, I'll walk you through 2 key articles. The first focuses on different coping strategies. Humor, punishment, reframing, and withdrawal affect the relationship satisfaction in response to unmet openness standards. The second article expands on these findings by highlighting the role of gender differences in how men and women cope with the relationship stress and how it affects their satisfaction. In romantic relationships, partners who often have certain expectations about emotional openness and communication, when those expectations aren't met, stress can arise. However, not much has been researched about the specific ways individuals cope with this stress and how much it affects the overall relationship quality. The study aimed to fill that gap by looking at 4 specific coping strategies. Humor, punishment, reframing, and exiting mediated the relationship between unmet openness standards and the relationship satisfaction. The study surveyed 205 individuals in new dating relationships. Participants were asked to self-report their relationship satisfaction, their experience with unmet openness, expectations, and their coping strategies. These strategies were categorized into 4 types: punishing, exiting, reframing, and humor. Mediation analysis were then conducted to determine how these strategies acted as intermediaries between the stress caused by unmet openness standards and the participants' overall success and satisfaction with their relationship. The study found that stress caused by unmet openness standards and expectations led participants to use all 4 coping strategies. However, not all strategies were beneficial to the relationship. Humor emerged as the only strategy positively associated with the relationship satisfaction. People who used humor to cope with the stress reported higher satisfaction in the relationship. On the other hand, however, punishing and exiting strategies were negatively associated with satisfaction. This suggests that withdrawing affection and considering ending the relationship tends to harm relationship quality. Interestingly, however, reframing, the act of changing one's perspective on the unmet expectations, was also negatively linked to satisfaction. The findings suggest that simply just adjusting your expectations without addressing the root of the cause of the stress doesn't necessarily improve the relationship. Overall, humor acted as a partial mediator, softening the negative impact of unmet relationship expectations, while punishment, exiting, and reframing exacerbated that same negative effect. The key takeaway from this study is that humor can be a powerful tool in maintaining relationship satisfaction when facing unmet expectations. On the other side, however, using punitive or disengagement strategies tends to harm those same relationships. For counselors and relationship educators, these findings suggest that encouraging couples to use humor and constructive reframing could improve their relationships, whereas behaviors like withdrawal or anger should be addressed and avoided. The research supports the importance of communication and effective coping mechanisms, showing how couples respond to stress can shape the overall quality of the relationship. Now that we've explored those coping strategies and how they impact the satisfaction in the face of unmet expectations, let's look at that second article that looks at how gender differences influence the way individuals cope with relational stress. While the first article we focused on coping strategies individuals use, the second article explores something new: the role of gender and how these strategies are employed. It asks, do men and women cope with relationship stress in different ways, and how does this affect their relationship and their satisfaction? The research aims to uncover how men and women approach stress in relationships differently. These coping styles are what contribute to relationship outcomes. This study surveyed 150 heterosexual couples, gathering data on their coping strategies, emotional responses to stress, and their relationship satisfaction. Participants were asked to report the use of their emotional regulation and social support and avoidance. By focusing on gender differences, the study aimed to see how these strategies manifested differently for men and women, and how each affected their relationship satisfaction. The findings revealed some pretty interesting gender-based patterns. Women are more likely to use social support and emotional regulation strategies linked to higher relationship satisfaction. These strategies helped women cope with their stress and communicate better with their partners. In contrast, men were more likely to avoid conflict and distance themselves, which was linked to lower satisfaction in their relationship. Avoidance behaviors like shutting down or withdrawing seemed to exacerbate their relational tension and dissatisfaction. Both genders, however, benefited from emotional regulation, suggesting that managing emotional reactions in the face of stress are crucial for maintaining a satisfaction in the relationship. What's important to note here is that gendered coping strategies influence satisfaction. While emotional regulation worked well for both genders, avoidance was much more harmful to men's satisfaction in comparison to women's. The main takeaway here is that coping strategies are not one size fits all. Men and women cope with stress in different ways, and these can affect the relationship dynamic and satisfaction. For relationship counselors, the research highlights the importance of understanding these gendered coping differences. Encouraging men to use more proactive strategies like emotional regulation and social support might improve satisfaction. Meanwhile, helping women continue to foster emotional regulation while also learning to address certain avoidance styles in their partner could be key. Ultimately, understanding how gender affects coping and tailoring more effective strategies can also improve and solve a lot of problems within relationships and their satisfaction. In summary, both studies show how coping mechanisms are important when dealing with relational stress, whether through humor, emotional regulation, or gender-specific strategies. How we respond to stress can make or break a relationship satisfaction. By understanding these dynamics, we can help foster healthier communication, more adaptive coping, and ultimately, way more romantically fulfilling relationships.